Yeah. That whole thing about the water, Ben?
Yeah, keep on going, investigating, and don't let them take you out of the game. Keep on going.
Yep.
Yeah, that water thing is quite interesting. That is like when you put it into the context of water being quite potentially the most magnetic thing that we know of, and more of it getting compiled into, for lack of better terminology, a resonance ball. Yeah.
So I don't know. So we'll back up here. I don't know if you guys saw the article. This was big news. Those of us who follow this kind of stuff were like, when this came out. It's a new study that they were doing on the the Marianas Trench, studying the tectonic plate movement again. That when the plates are moving, basically they're absorbing water, and the water is going down inside under the Earth's mantle. And there's now, and I pulled out an article from 2014 where a whole big study had been done proving that there's an entire mantle of water underneath the rock.
So
basically floating on a mantle of water.
I'd like to chuck this in there, and hopefully not to veer off at all, but you know how you also put out that, or in the UU room, there was the thing about Antarctica melting from underneath because of radiation or whatever.
We already talked about that. You just missed it.
Yeah. Cool. So in that aspect, like it's that in that whole article, right? They literally are just like, so we've found this, but it's probably been going on for ages, so it's nothing to worry. So this whole water being absorbed thing, I would say, is something that they've just noticed. And what we may find, this is my hypothesis, or my theory, sorry, is that what you'll actually find is that intake of water is the fluidic pumps of the aquifers. And it starts there and goes through and gets pushed up and gets
and it pulls back up.
Hydrocarbonated and then goes,
Or even maybe even pushed through and cleaned.
Yeah, no, totally that. So
and then pushed back out again.
It goes into darkness, and then it becomes immature water, and it flows up to the springs, and in that process of not having water and all the rest of it, it becomes hydrocarbonated. So it's got all the minerals and all that have been activated and charged, and they're ready to then come out of the spring.
Yep.
So.
Yep. There's been, in the last year, no, I'm going to say through last year, let's say in the last 4 years, some pretty incredible fucking scientific articles have come out. Now, whether we want to fall for the NASA crap that here we are, we have a new study, and look, here's our new study. Or just the very fact that they're bringing these pieces of information forward. This may be shit that they've known for decades, or it may be so totally new. It's the fact that they're bringing it forward to the public. We've got many, many new pieces of science that are opening up concepts now that seriously need to be looked at and considered, such as what Ben was just talking about, this whole thing of the water going into the inner mantle.
Well, can we put the kind of release over the last 2 weeks of info, sort of that have, so you've got Zarkova, who has announced the rhythm of the sun, the magnetic rhythm with the UV light spectrums being put in.
And I haven't looked at that yet. I'm still behind. So if you want to give us a rundown, give me the version of that.
Essentially, she's a solar physicist. And they were the data that they've inputted, basically, they've processed this through a supercomputer, right, all this data. So they've compiled as much data as humanly possible, not just from like NASA and stuff, but like from the 1700s, 1600s, any recordings they could find on
I
sunspots.
saw part of that one. Yep.
So they put all that data in and they got this pulse and they were like, oh, this is interesting, except it looks like it should have a second variable. So they ended up putting in the UV light spectrums and their frequencies or whatever it was into the supercomputer, and the calculations came out and they found that essentially the sun has a constant pulse. I'm going to correlate it to something similar to a heart.
Yep.
And from these pulses and the statistics that they've put in, it shows this almost perfect rhythm.
Yeah.
And it shows the highs and the lows. So it shows the grand solar maximums and the grand solar minimums.
Yeah.
The trenches, the ice ages, all this. The thing that it doesn't show is any of the planet's influences. But they're looking at putting all that stuff in because they're going with the Astrophysicist Society and stuff, and they're like, well, can we put our info in there? So this is correlating that the sun itself is a complete regulatory body.
And is cyclical?
Completely. The other thing that they found with this was that the sun does not sit in any center. They have proven that what happens is that the sun, with some of the planets and whatnot, actually oscillates in and around the center.
Yeah.
So what this also added to the picture was not just that grand solar minimums and stuff are on your elliptical orbit, and then depending on your tilt, actually also means, just for instance, as if all the other larger planets, Jupiter, Saturn, are on the other side, they have a potential to pull the sun that way of center. So then if we're on this tilt, this is what's known as a grand solar minimum, like a grand solar minimum, like the actual. So the sun's actually a little bit away and your tilt's off. And it stays like this because, of course, the way that the planets move around, they pull the sun on its oscillation until it wobbles back into point when they come back round, and these sorts of things. So what they've actually proven is the sun's pulse to us and how that actually works. And from that, they've noticed and done calculations on a huge microvoltage drop in the atmosphere, like a huge.
Oh, okay. Can you define that a little better? So when they're talking about microvoltage drop in the atmosphere.
So there's kind of like, let's say there's like a medium charge in the atmosphere that is kind of, and I think they said it's about 1.5 volts, I'm pretty sure it was the average. And I guess you get an average by going, if it's this at this low and this at this high, then what, But what they were talking about in voltage droppage is about negative 6.5 over the next over the next 2 to 4 years, right? Within 2 years, we will notice it, and in the winter of next year, 2019, it will basically be the solar grand minimum will be in swing. Now, what sways this as to whether it's like a 10-year, a 40-year, or a 100-year, guess what it is? Planetary influence. It depends on the planets and where they are and what they're doing.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question, because you have a lot more under your belt when it comes to the electromagnetic stuff. So when you're talking about the atmosphere, you're saying that it's going from, like, say, a positive 1.5 volt at its normal peak, and it's going down to a negative volt. Would that not in and of itself, depending on the stability of the planetary fields, cause discharges going from the positive to the negative? If the planet is on a positive voltage, we're up here as positive voltage, then you're going to have minimal amount of discharge. But if all of a sudden the atmospheric voltage drops to a negative number, then you're going to have a lot more discharge because it's the positive going to the negative.
Yep, exactly. See, now the other thing is too is like what you've kind of got to think about is the influences that are affecting us and the influences that aren't affecting us as much as they were. And what I mean is like there is the
Affecting
potential
versus affecting?
Yeah. So there's the potential that if the sun is smaller and thusly the earth is getting bombarded by more cosmic rays, then the earth could actually expand under that pressure because the sun's influence is
hypothesize
less
it already is doing.
Right. But then on top of that, so what you're saying with these discharges is you actually have this kind of an effect that's happening perhaps with what's actually this kind of effect that's actually happening, because the heliosphere, of course, is I can't even remember what did they say, 1,000, like 1,000 times denser.
Yeah,
those
and
Russian scientists,
it's come down. Like our atmosphere has gone from being yay big to being yay big.
So
right,
so
and compression.
Exactly. So that's the first part of the release of information. Then there was, and I can't find this article again, but it was from NASA, and I was cracking up, and the only one I can find is not the one that I did find, but they were basically backing this all up by going, oh, the sun, this, that, the cycle, da-da-da, except the drop was only going to be in temperature and only in the ionosphere, right? And I was like, how are they saying that the ionosphere is not? I was like, this is weird.
That doesn't even make sense.
So then there was that bit of information. Of course, there's the dust moons. Right? Okay. And now,
plus that other second moon.
Yeah.
Plus two or three dust moons.
Well, so because I've got an actual like story with this, which is
okay. Go.
But anyway,
I'll roll a cigarette. You just talk.
So then there's the dust moons, and then of course the stuff that sort of came out via Rex at the Leak Project and his astrophysicist friend about the wobble. Yeah, the wobble. So, which was basically saying, which was basically saying, instead of thinking of it more as a wobble, as the crust is actually moving. So even though the thing's doing this, what they're actually saying is that stays like that. The hot spot or the magnetic stays, the crust moves. Okay, so all this information, right? Now we're talking about discharge and all the rest of it, and you and I have been in Messenger talking about Dollard. Now, Dollard sits there and still says what one of the trippiest things that he did was the vacuum tube with high voltage charge between two Tesla electrodes that when the arc emitted and hit inside the bulb, he created an electric universe. So,
I got to watch that again. It's been a long.
With all this information, we do have massive electric discharge. We have gaseous to dust bodies that are floating around in a vacuum.
They could also be very well charged.
Yeah, which you know, if they create enough spin, which it sounds like they have, they've got their own atmosphere, right? So then you put Velikovsky's work into start putting Velikovsky's work into play with the the collision of the planets and whatnot, and we might literally be witnessing like a very large sum of like, get off your high horses, humans, because there's this motherfucking shit that goes on, and you guys think that you're all powerful and in control, but this is where we're at in the cycle. So it's much along the lines of what you were talking about with the houses and the trees. It's like if you throw the ringing cedars and stuff in there, and trees are vibratory, and vibrations are getting higher, it's like the potentials are massive for what's transpiring.
Okay, so I want to throw another piece into this whole thing about the water mantle. And thank you for bringing up that. I wish I could remember the guy's name on Rex's. The thing about the shifting, the mantle.
Well, the magnetic pole wobble.
Right, but the fact of like not the whole planet is not like literally doing this. The fact that it's like you got this stays here, the action, but it's just the outer skin that's
and not like that. Like bits under it, the whole thing's shifting.
So, going back to the water thing, because of course we saw every time there's been hurricanes, fucking earthquakes, etc., and the fucking water fucking disappears, fucking just vanishes, right? Now it does seep back over time. It starts coming back. It comes back. Okay, what if? Okay, and I'm gonna throw this out into the way fucking woo. Water is lubrication, right? If there needs to be more water underneath for this slide, as it spins faster, it brings in more water. It's kind of like what do they call that effect? The Coriolis effect. Like basically, as it spins and it starts sucking in more water into the inside.
Like centrifugal.
Like centrifugal. So that if you've got, let's say that it's not even an even thing, but it's probably not an even continuous like this. It could be that it goes whoop, shoop, and slips in times. Each one could be a segment where, and that's exactly it, where all of a sudden we get the water comes in, because as it slides, it sucks in all the water through all these different tectonic cracks, if you will. You're muted, Ben, and I didn't do it.
Yeah, through different pores and different viscous bodies of mineralization. Like, what is osmosis? Water moving from a lower to a higher state through a semi-permeable membrane, right? So the other
charge of water.
Well, see, this is right. Bang. Intro. Thank you, D. So, I think the last time I was able to talk on, like, with you guys was I sort of brought up Jared Pollock was talking about a new water that they'd found in the body called H3O2, which was a different charge of water that sits kind of in along the muscle membrane, so just on the outside. It's like a compression, right? So we chuck in Jerry Tennant and the bio voltage. I just want to say this because it adds on to what you're talking about, the skin, right?
Yeah.
Then scientists just came out and announced that they've potentially found another organ in the body, which is this
the interstitium, which is what I was just going to bring up.
So I'm sitting here going, I actually think that this mucous membrane is possibly this H3O2.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Which what they're actually talking about is the water that carries the charge. So is the wiring. So if we look macro, micro right now at what you just said.
Say again, what is it? What's that water called? H3O2. So 3 hydrogen.
Yeah, which is a more feminine. It's the hydrogen.
Don't start with that with me. You know I'll stomp on you if you go that place.
Charge wise.
Guys, you know what you guys are describing right now?
What?
The whole thing you're describing? What the Stargate? The actual fucking Stargate.
The skin on the Stargate?
Different spins. It's not just one spin. You've got the outer spin, the inner spin of that, and the inner spin, and they're all going in different directions.
Wheels within wheels within wheels within wheels.
Yes, that's what you guys have just described that.
Well, Ezekiel.
Oh, Dani, dude, don't do that.
Well, just remember he was a normal dude and the fucking church stole him.
Yeah, I know, but just don't go there. Not for right this moment, because I don't want to get off topic.
You don't want to go Revelations?
No, we don't. No, because that took place in the fall of Rome. So the fall of
mucous membrane, H3O2.
Okay. The interstitium, and I'm not saying that right. The new organ is called the interstitium. It's like that. It's interstitium, something like that. Anyways, that's what it's called. They've discovered this. It runs around organs. It is a thin layer of cells that runs around organs that has water in it. Now, I've hypothesized. Now, this is really interesting when you said the H3O2, Ben, because what's the one big thing I keep talking about all the time right now is, of course, talking about the C60.
Interstitium.
Interstitium. There we go. There we go. It was. I knew it was close to that. Come on, give me some kind of brownie points on it. It looks like it is a layer that runs between every layer, around the organs, around the muscle sheathing, around. And I hypothesize. I think you're going to find that they're going to discover the layers of it within the skin. Now think of programmable water. Think about this in the fact of all these water, and what we're hypothesizing could very well be this H3O2 is a new form of water running throughout the human body that is highly hydrogenated, shall we say?
Yes.
Highly hydrogenated. What's this? Okay, so Natasha has just thrown up the link to YouTube. Natasha, can you do me a favor and drop that same link as a Facebook message to me? Just because sometimes my chat gets all fucky and it's really, really hard to keep track of all these links.
So, no, keep going. I forgot what I was about to say just then.
Well, there's so many aspects to what's going on the planet right now. And this is why, going back to this whole thing with the dew and all the rest of it, I honestly feel it is a fucking distraction because we've got so many new pieces coming out of our comprehension of what our planet is going through.
I just had the remembrance.
Yeah, go, hit me.
So, what happens when you get like an electrolyte and you layer it with like a conductive and non-conductive and conductive and non-conductive and conductive and non-conductive layering? It's
dogs? Was that your dogs who just went nuts?
Yeah, someone's come home. It's a capacitor.
Wait, say that again?
It's a capacitor, right? So a capacitor is layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers, much like a battery.
Right. Yeah.
Of different forms of stuff with an electrolyte that activates it.
Right.
To create electricity.
Right.
So
but can't the capacitor discharge a huge amount of electricity just within a second, and also can take it within a few seconds?
So what you do is, well, what I do is because I bought his book on voltage healing now, so I'm starting to go through that. It starts bringing some very poignant things together about the goings on of especially us, like internally, the way Jerry Tennant breaks that sort of stuff down, and the charge play. It starts giving a lot of validation for what these people have been saying for a long time and getting shunned for once again.
Yeah. This is one of my questions, right? Is unfortunately when we talk about things like, for example, the cosmic rays that are coming in, when we're talking about things like the Earth's magnetopause and the magnetosphere, and we always have to rely on these NASA fucking graphs, their equipment, their representations that they're showing to the public, which makes it really, really difficult when you're trying to look for information. When we talk about the charge, when we talk about the positive and the negative charge, we don't know what kind of charges are coming in right now. We just don't know. Are they even measuring that? And if they're measuring it, where do we find the information? Right? These cosmic rays that come in, these particles. For example, we've got things like I said about the neutrinos blasting through the planet, coming out of Antarctica. That was the big scientific article that came out 2 months ago. They don't understand it because it breaks all the laws of physics on their comprehension of what's fucking going on in the world. When we have all these things, it's very, very difficult to be able to pull together a full color picture of exactly what's playing out and exactly what's going on. All we can do is gather up the little pieces and try and analyze them and try and pull the information together in a way that is relatively logical. But we also have to remain open to the fact that tomorrow, next week, next month, another study could come out with, pardon me, another piece of the puzzle that all of a sudden makes us go, oh shit. This gives us, that's another piece. Like this, there's another aspect here that we have to take into consideration. Kind of like what Ben was saying with the solar physicist, and she's compiled all the information, but now the astrophysicists are coming forward and saying, hey, can we put our information with your information and see what we come up with? Each time more information comes up, it gives us a slightly different picture, or sometimes a radically different picture of what was happening. So for example, even this whole thing, a year ago, when we first started seeing all these things about the water disappearing off the coastlines, etc., we were throwing all kinds of theories out, going, oh my God, this is crazy. And now we have articles talking about how the water is seeping in, going into under the earthen mantle, and that there's another whole ocean layer underneath the rock layer, so to speak. Well, now all of a sudden our perspective on all that water disappearing off the coastlines shifts, doesn't it? Because now, shifts, no pun intended. It changes because now we have another piece that may be added to the equation. And this is why we have to be really, really careful to not allow ourselves to get locked into a specific little box and to keep looking for the pieces. Oh, okay. Yeah, Nancy, if you can find any information on that. She was saying CERN can measure exotic particles. I will try and find the article. Better than neutrino measurements. Okay, good. Anything like that. So we have all these different pieces coming forward, and we have all these incredible minds, and some of them are completely bloody ignored, right? Literally. They get no recognition, because if you speak out about anything that is not part of the mainstream, then your stuff gets ignored. And using Dollard as an example, when he built his earthquake detection device, where the way he figured out how to be able to predict earthquakes happening based on the electrical and magnetic influences, they shut him down. And funnily enough, last night we watched the movie San Andreas. And I don't know if you've seen the movie San Andreas, which is about it's a big earthquake disaster movie. It stars The Rock and the whole bit. I think it came out in 2015, 2016, something like that. But there's a character in the movie who, now this character works for the university and is the chief professor in seismology. And he comes up with a way. The opening of the movie is him and his partner figure out a way to predict fucking earthquakes. And Nick and I laughed and were like, oh my God, it's Eric Dollard. The only difference is in the movie, in the Hollywood fairy tale, he at the end gets the recognition he should get, and they're able to use his information to predict earthquakes and save a whole pile of people. Which, of course, in the reality of it is, Dollard got closed down and they took all his stuff, and no one wants to know about predicting earthquakes. Hence the fact that Dutch Sins continuously gets shit upon all the time. Why? Because he predicts earthquakes. And he's damn fucking accurate about it.
Yeah, but the way that he does it as well is like, you know, is fucking very cool, because what he's watching is the peaks and the flows, and he's watching how the ripples in the pond are affecting each other. Just on the Dollard note, holy Jesus, since you said can't find any way to get contacted with it, I swear that site's only just been like updated since you and I started talking about that. But he's got Facebook page with, like, he's been going hard, man. Like,
okay, I know, because he disappeared. He disappeared for fucking years. You didn't hear anything. And all of a sudden, in the last year, all of a sudden, Dollard is doing shows, etc. I don't know. If someone get a message to Eric Dollard, I really, really want to fucking talk to him. Ben and I have some fucking questions. Here's some fucking questions.
Whoa. We want some answers.
Or at least some opinions.
Like, you know, the statements he makes, it's like, okay. and if you are inclined to insert them into your reality, it kind of knocks a fucking like a whole shelf of books and a few years of fucking research gone.
Well, this is it. So, I mean, we can only, that's what I was saying. When you stepped away, I said we have to keep our eyes open for all these new pieces coming in, because a new piece comes in tomorrow or the next day or the month later, and it can totally shift our perception again, because it can bring another piece to the table. All of a sudden you go, oh, snap.
That's why that's that.
That's why it does that.
Do you not remember when they discovered the plasma tubes in the sky drifting above the Earth? I think that's part of the puzzle.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. There's another one that's been told. I totally forgotten about that, Nancy.
Yeah.
That's another one of those things that came out.
The thing is, when there's plasma in our sky, plasma generates exotic particles as well. And maybe that's exactly why we're seeing the different color frequencies changing in our sky with our purple skies. Because it's not chemtrails. That's what they want us to look at. See, they're not shutting down people talking about chemtrails.
Nope.
That's the narrative they want us all to follow, like the Jews, right? But these purple skies, it all has to do with plasma, exotic particles, heating up in the thermosphere, all those fancy things.
I would add to that and say it's what the plasma is transmuting to as it comes in. And it's those colors that were used as identifying markers for what the fuck we needed to do.
And color and frequency, right?
Exactly.
Well, this is that whole thing is remember, like, don't separate them. So you see the color in a certain frequency, but it's come from, so that it's all that the color is the frequency.
Yep.
Yeah, so like the different minerals create different colors. So the greens are highly excited oxygens and coppers and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And what your reason you're seeing color is like what I I'm making an assumption here is they're not being oxidized. As they whiten off, they are oxidizing. So what you're kind of seeing is almost like sonar luminescence. So you're seeing the energies come in, hitting the particulate.
Exactly, it's the particulate.
And it's showing. That's its spell. Yeah.
So the lesson of the atmosphere as well. Sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, we're talking about particulate, right? And matter, and that's what you're going to get. It's going to change the refraction of the light, whether it's generated from plasma or not. So now they've come out with the dust moons. Now I haven't read this article, but that's telling me that there's more dust particles in our upper atmosphere.
Isn't that funny?
There's another dot connector.
And then add right straight bang into that if one of those dust clouds or dust moons gets hit by a large enough voltage, it has the potential to terraform.
Into another moon? Now, throw on this China's whole thing about they're going to launch an artificial moon?
And sun.
And sun?
Yeah,
but I'm just saying. Remember, with the sun thing, it's actually their CERN, right? It's not actually a sun. That's a nickname.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I know. I get it. But it's every time, like, what's in a word, right? Like, what's in a word? Why do they use that terminology? That's, to me, it's like, I don't care what they're doing. That's kind of whole pile of irrelevant. Who cares?
No.
It's why did they use that terminology? China is creating an artificial sun.
Well, it's like when they name storms, it's to make us feel familiar with them, like Hurricane Harry. It's to bring familiarity to it instead of terrorizing us with cyclone craziness. You know what I mean? Like, why do they name storms? It's to make us.
So what you're saying is they shouldn't name the next door Hurricane Hades.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's oh fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say again. Names.
Dani was talking about the artificial moon and the sun.
Okay, so
well, it's also association, right? That's what it is. So when they sit there and say, "Oh, it can get to 100 million degrees Celsius," you're like, "Oh yeah, but we've got a sun." And then they go, "Well, actually, the sun only goes to 16 million." You're like,
"Oh wait, yeah, oh wait."
Snap. So it's association, I think, first and foremost, and then I mean, for me, it always sort of makes you go, well, when they said Ra had the sun or was the sun or controlled the sun, what does that mean under the context of China having and controlling a sun? Myth is no longer so much myth, and sci-fi is most definitely no longer sci-fi.
I'd like to know how they're going to contain that kind of energy, that kind of thermal energy. Like, if you read the article, I think it lasted for a couple of seconds. Was it between something a few seconds and 10 seconds? Yeah. And I saw the device in the article. I mean, you don't even really know what to believe anymore anyway, but you read that kind of picture of who knows
it's like I said, the stupid guys in Tokyo building the super electromagnet that they can only turn it on. It's immeasurable in nanoseconds of how long it lasts before it destroys itself. Nanoseconds, okay? You just spent how many millions of dollars to build an electromagnet that runs on 1,600 or 1,200 Teslas that destroys itself and blows the wall and doors out of your entire area that you built to confine it.
I just thought of something too about there was a magnetar. Remember Cliff High talked about this? There was a magnetar in, when was it? December 27th, 2004. And it ripped off part of our atmosphere. If we go back and look at that article, that might give us clues. Sorry, Dani, go ahead.
No, that's exactly where I was going when I was saying this before. If it's ripped, okay, let's say, like I said before, so our atmosphere used to be this deep, and now our atmosphere is only this deep. So, what is the change in the, I'm going to use a bad, poor terminology, compression, right, in there. And now, when you deal with things like charge, how does this change everything? Because, and this is my question about, it changes everything. So this is one of my questions is when we look at, for example, data from pre-2004, right?
Essentially.
And they've come up with this, this and this and this and this and this. But now, instead of being here, our atmosphere is here with a completely different pressure, if you will. That data may no longer be relevant because even the charge of the ionosphere would be, I'm going to assume, radically different.
Exactly. So all you got to picture is as if you've got the positive and negative ends of like a battery.
Yeah.
You know, you move them closer and the charge will only go a certain distance. So to get it to go a greater distance, you need a higher charge.
Right. But now.
Right. So exactly. So there's your, like, you have by way of default the potential for more electrical and therefore more magnetic occurrences.
So what we should look for then is the satellites coming down, because if they're in the upper atmosphere and we're getting more charged particles. And
didn't Mir come down? Didn't the big Chinese satellite come down?
Remember all the light bulbs?
What do you mean?
Remember all those things they were finding over in like India and stuff?
Oh, yeah, all the big round balls, the big metal. I was joking. I kept calling them the light bulbs were falling out. All the star light bulbs were falling out and just falling down.
I mean, weird shit is happening. We keep forgetting that the observatories were closed, or was that just a sideline?
No, and this is, okay, getting back to this again. Okay, getting back again. And I talked about this. Did I talk about this on Sunday? I don't even remember. I wish I could remember what I talked about from show to show. I talked about the fact of there was the two shows that came out. Both were done live. So one was the call-in, the guy who was the soldier who got called back to duty for domestic duty in the States. And he was really shook up. And he said his whole base was really, really shook up. Now, we got confirmation through another friend of ours, who we know here, called someone she knows, who confirmed that, yes, it's a domestic deployment in the States to northern Texas.
What were they calling it?
What
Project?
the fuck is northern? What the fuck is in northern Texas?
Okay, there's something in northern Texas, and I have
bushes.
to look it up, and I'll
Okay,
find out for you.
Because okay,
That
The
man,
Bush family, just saying.
the Bush family, they're going in to take out the bushes. It would be so nice to dream that.
you know what?
It's a base. Hold on, it's a base that was closed over 25 years ago, I believe, and they converted it into a technology center. And what they're doing is deploying people there with the codes of directing these vehicles with microwave weapons on the top of them.
So again,
So
like
that's what the deal is about the base, because the base has not been active in a very long time.
and we know that
Yeah,
that's when they say northern, because when they say northern Texas, that's where they're being sent to. So they know that that's where that base is.
Well, it's a technology center now, but
Okay.
that's where they're being deployed. Yeah.
Okay. So the other one that happened was another one that was an email that was sent to one of these guys who does all these shows. He does a nightly show, and I wish I don't have the video up anymore. I think I posted it with Sunday's show. And he talked about they got an email saying that the quintessential they, NASA, government, DOD, etc., knows about and I think they called it a solar or cosmic event was about to happen. They've known it was going to happen for a long, long time, or at least since the 90s or something. They've been watching, etc., and this guy was, again, really, really quite afraid, saying, I don't know what exactly this is. I'm just warning everyone, you need to be prepared. And again, as I said, normally I take a lot of this stuff as just whatever. You file it off over here and go, yeah, okay, whatever, and you move on. Except that we are already seeing anomalies. We're seeing the sun anosmalies. We're seeing the moon all over the fucking place.
And the neutrinos precede radiation. So they've released this information about the neutrinos they're measuring, right, from Antarctica. Yep. The reason why they measure neutrinos is because it precedes radiation. So what is coming in now?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, I didn't know that, Nancy.
Yeah, that's exactly why they measure neutrinos, because it always precedes the radiation.
Yeah, well, neutrinos essentially, from what I've sort of looked at, neutrinos are like base plates. So it's like they're almost, not quite, but almost like the ether's version of these carbon compounds that we're looking at now. So they're a base plate waiting to get hit by frequency to then turn into matter.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Okay, so that is really fucking interesting.
That's like the reason I make, like, I guess, claims like that is when I look at biological transmutation, which is what the studies that were done in the late 1800s all the way through into the 50s of the transmutation of biological and chemical, and when I say chemical, I mean like mineral and into something completely different in abundance without it even being there. So they did tests on chickens where they fed them only oats. They gave them no shell grit. They gave them no form of calcium or anything. And they found that they were turning the potassium into calcium that was not present anywhere in their diet. So there's these biological things that happen. So I'm going to assume, which may make an ass out of me, but hey, I'm fucking up for that. We've already fucking been there, so called that. But I'm going to assume that in the energetic state, that is what happens. So things like when we were looking at ORMUS, right, orbitomically rearranged monatomic elements, the stuff that David Hudson did in his research is the reason it was so hard to test is because all that was showing was iron oxide until the heat ratio for the capacity of the other elements was reached, and then they were like, hey, I'm here. Prior to that, they didn't show. So they only showed when they were needed. So I'm looking at neutrinos and comparing sort of like alchemical transmutation, I guess you and going, yeah.
No, okay, because that does make sense. No, I get it. Okay, same thing though. Then we have the neutrinos. So they're fucking coming out of fucking Antarctica. What do we also have? Oh, new article talking about, there's radioactive rocks in Antarctica that is heating up and melting the ice. And we've got new radar images that are showing the different land masses under the ice. And they're very interestingly split. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when you look at the actual shapes of these, including the one very, very tiny one right smack in the center that looks an awful lot like a pyramid. Just saying.
Don't go to Atlantis yet.
No, I'm not doing that. Okay, but this is the thing. So we have all these things taking place. Then you throw in the solar observatories were closed. Now, no, I know not all of them were closed. I know this. But two of the biggest ones were closed. And we have a lot of the feeds that have gone offline. Is Hubble back online again?
Well,
is Kepler back online again?
Exactly. Like in the thermosphere, where are these satellites located? I can't remember all my layers of the.
I never can remember them either.
Magnetosphere, we've got our thermosphere, we've got our stratosphere. I can't remember all the layers.
Ionosphere and yeah, I can never remember the layers.
I think it's the thermosphere that's the most outer one that gets hit first, and I think that's where the satellites are. So if you're right, I forgot about the satellites going offline. I was saying when we start seeing the satellites coming down, but these are going offline. Maybe they're getting super saturated and they're not going offline, but their telemetry is getting saturated and they can't make measurements because that's naturally what would happen if you start getting hit with exotic particles.
Well, it would also depend on what those satellites were registering, right? So like if some of them were reading magnetics and the wave was magnetic at that thing, so it's going to fuck that one up. And if it's solar flares
but if it's still modern day technology and they're using semiconductors, that stuff can't handle any radiation whatsoever.
Very true. Very, very true.
This is just it. And not only that, like let's say if you're sending up we know they have a shit ton of satellites up there and even up on the space station where they're continuously measuring this and detecting that, etc. Well, if you've set up, we know how these guys do this shit where they go and they send up a $10 million test. It is only made to detect one thing or two things. But then you bombard it with a whole pile of other shit. Guess what? Yeah. Your data?
Well, the other side of this, of course, is, and we can't forget to try and throw all the pieces on the table, is what's Elon just announced. And what's been accepted to go through.
What?
4,000 microsatellites for world internet.
Oh, shit.
And
free
it's been
free phones, free internet for everyone. I'm sorry, every time I hear that, all I can think of is that movie. And it's like, wait.
Whichever alphabet agency has gone, yep, sweet, and given it the go-ahead, and that happened within weeks. So if it's all above board, and it's not just bullshit, although he is talking about it, right? I can't remember. It's not Skynet, he said. It's not.
Okay, the very fact that he's anticipating that people like us are going to call it Skynet, and I get it. I get it.
But he also does say he's like, we're not putting like enough technology for it to do anything except for basically this. So, but. You know, like you sit there and you put these variabilities in, and perhaps a whole bunch of satellites maybe did go down, and what SpaceX has been doing, of course, is already launching these things. So perhaps they've been helping replace them as fast as they've perhaps been going offline.
Okay, the other one I want to throw on the table. My opening comment when we opened the show today. Technology is fucked. Okay? And I don't mean Mercury in retrograde. I'm talking Google search goes down. Facebook goes down. Instagram has gone down again this week. Twitter has gone down. We have there was something about Amazon recently. We have all these things that have, yeah, you get little boggles with Facebook occasionally. But when all of a sudden all the major websites, and now we're not talking about just social media, we're talking about things like banking, PayPal, credit cards, insurance companies, health companies going down, go down, go down, go down, go down. That has to be something else that's thrown on the table as yet another piece of evidence that something's going on. Now, if this is something that's causing massive fluctuations between, what do all these companies have in common? They have massive fucking servers, don't they? We're not talking little like home desktop fucking servers like this.
It's funny that you mentioned servers. One of the largest servers / the server of all servers that created all URLs and whatnots.
Yeah.
Has started firing iron particles, remember?
Oh, yes, well. yes. Lead. Lead.
Lead. Yes. So the largest server has been doing that thing too. That would be a fucking hilarious one. Worldwide internet going down when they fire up CERN.
Lead deflects radiation. What?
And that's what we came up with.
You did? Sorry. I missed the first part of the show.
No. This morning, when I had a conversation, we did talk about this earlier before you got in, Nancy. Ann and I had a conversation with Gail and just in chat this morning. And the thing is what does lead do? It protects from radiation. And again, I'm sorry, it's like one of those things where you go, these things are all just so interesting how they all, just seem to tie together strangely enough.
I think we start really, really worrying when they decide to do mercury and I think it was lead. If they ever do those two, then like that's a big worry. Remember only like 6 weeks, 2 months ago, there was like a paper that came out and it was based on some stuff that they did in the late 1800s once again. And they were doing something with mercury and lead, and they were finding that with and charge. That's fucking right. It was fucking charge, mercury, and lead. Whatever they were doing, they were finding that it was growing a gold skin.
And they
were They suppressed all the stuff that was coming out, and it's like, oh, that's so interesting.
Interesting.
I mean, lead's funny for the out. Yeah, exactly, Jackie. The lead's funny for that aesthetic alone. It's like that's the be all and end all of, or the major thing for alchemists is lead into gold.
Lead into gold, exactly.
Can I interject something here, Danny? It's related to what you guys are talking about, honestly.
Go ahead, dude.
Okay, I just wanted to, get in. Remember last week we were talking about and expressing a good deal of frustration of not knowing in advance what's going on and all this stuff. And the observation was made by other than myself that we know what we know only when we need to know it, and not in advance. Yeah. Well, I was listening to what you and Ben and Nancy were talking about, and you talk about that. I forget what it was that precedes radiation, but it does something.
Neutrinos.
Okay, neutrinos, and there's evidence of that. And then there was a reference to some kind of diet thing where some animals weren't fed a certain thing, and then all of a sudden they had it.
Yep.
Well, I see that as kind of a putting together of a dot over here and a dot over here and a dot from back last week, which we were talking about a similar thing about this idea of, well, we don't have it right now. Well, we don't know right now. Well, we don't know right now. And then all of a sudden, boom, when we need to know it, we'll freaking know it.
Yep.
And that's just, I just wanted to kind of tie those, those disparate things together because they do tie together. Anyway, that's it.
No, thank you, Maury. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
You just made me think real quick. I was going to jump in here real quick and say, yeah, more. You just made me think of the Rumsfeld's famous words about the unknown knowns and the all that. You've heard it. You've read it. I'm sure. Everybody, a lot of people have read it. It had what we know. We know of the unknown knowns and all that stuff. All that double speaker, or whatever they do. And you think about it, it's like, well, yeah. I mean, there are unknown. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, type of thing.
You don't know what you don't know, and you can't know what you don't know until all of a sudden you know it, and then you know that you didn't know it.
Kind of why the whole now thing actually has any relevance is because it's like, even when you know stuff, it's only relevant at that now if it's relevant. So it's, you know, you only need to know what you need to know at the time, which is the other side of it. So if it has application, then and it fits, then okay, we've got to, you know, put it up on that our own neural links and sort of have it there so that we don't, you know, lose sight of it all. Because
that's what they teach you in alchemy. You know, that's exactly how they teach it. And they'll say people, you've got the ones that are unconscious, that they're unconscious. You have the ones that are becoming conscious, that they've been unconscious, and the ones that are conscious of being conscious. And the only way to be conscious of being conscious is in the moment.
Yep. My darlings, my love, all of you guys, it is now 20-1. We've been going for, well, I've been sitting in this chair for over 3 hours now. And my ass is asleep. So, and my head is quickly following because I'm starting to yawn really bad.
I'm just going to quickly put out publicly right now that we should try and arrange a deep immersion. I dare you, Emily, and I dare you, Randy.
Okay. Yeah, we should definitely do that. It's a matter of getting everyone together, which has been virtually impossible for the last couple of months. Yes, I think we got to try and get a deep immersion arranged for sure.
I'll try to help you out with that.
But it's just, I know Randy's really, really busy. I know that Emily's really, really busy. And all our schedules, it just seems for the last month and a half, is just like we're never, ever, we have a little small chat group. It's like me, Ben, Jeff, Randy, and Emily. And we are never, any time in the last 2 months, are we all in the chat when anyone else is.
Just quickly, I have to add in because I did catch a little bit in the car, and you brought up people having heart attacks. I just want to remind everyone of the statistic of 21% increase around daylight saving time.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because with all the sickness I've been through, and now I have fluid around my heart. So.
We got to deal with that, chick. Go get your tooth pulled.
I know.
Okay, guys, we're going to have to tie it up for here because I really do have to go to bed. I'm like fading really, really fast. And I can't keep up to Ben if I'm out of coffee. So I'm out of coffee, so I got to just stop talking.
When's the last time you stocked up on coffee?
Stocked up on coffee?
Yeah.
Every time I go to the grocery store. Are you kidding?
Yes, I was wondering. Yeah, it's like because I don't know how, like, you know, like I do, I sort of do that too. It's like, yeah, you sort of have this steady thing, you know, you go through day by day, and you know how much you're going to need in the long run. Yeah.
Yep. So I actually just went and bought coffee yesterday because I'm almost out.
Wow.
Okay, guys, we will be back on Sunday night for the Unfuckers movie. We're watching the good oldie but classic, The Abyss. We're watching the director's cut, the extended version, which has got some really, really good footage in it. Interesting shit. And, yeah, I will see you guys all very, 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 very soon.
Sleep well, D.
Bye, guys.
Love yous.
Love you.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish my last cigarette because I done be tired.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired too, Jessica. I did a lot today. I'm so proud of myself. I had 2 days in a row. I don't know what to do.
So did you get proper soup?
Yeah.
Or was telling me that someone brought you some soup?
Oh, yeah. Spencer made me soup. Brought it over. It's awesome.
Well, I was thinking about you because I went to my butcher's and they had chicken necks and chicken backs, and I bought 2 kilos of chicken necks and chicken backs, and I can get small chickens for quite a good price. So I skinned those, took all the meat off those and put those in, and I literally just turned it off before we went live and turned off my soup. It's been going since yesterday. I was like, now if I had a way to send chicken soup to Dawn, it's an awful long way. There's like no possible way of getting it there.
Did you actually like buy the necks and with the skin on it, and is there heads on them?
No, they have no heads on
Holy
them.
crap.
No, they're just the necks. But I've made soup with chicken heads in them. Fucking chicken feet and everything. You're just boiling it down, darling. You boil it down, you throw the rest away. We give it to
I'm so thankful that we have people like you.
The crazy ass people who make soup out of fucking anything.
No, well, that too, but the fact that nothing moves you. You're our rock, man. You're our rock when it comes to shit like that.
I'll tell you a story. When we were all in Oustam in Morocco, we said almost ate vegetarian for the whole time of the gathering there. And it got to the point where there was a whole pile of us going, like, if we don't get some fucking meat, we're going to fucking die soon. Like, I was, like, getting skinnier and skinnier. I was not doing well. So one of the people there donated the money, and then we went out and we bought 5 whole chickens. Now, in Morocco, if you said to someone, like, I want a free-range chicken, they'd all look at you and go, like, all chickens are free-range. Because literally the butcher, like the guy at the corner who's selling chickens, they're out in his yard. And you say, I want 2 chickens. And he says, how big? And you go, like this big. And he goes, okay. And he goes out to the back, grabs a chicken, chops off its head, defrosts it, and gives it to you. Okay? Like it's like when you get them home, they're still warm.
Holy crap.
They brought 5 of these chickens into the house, and they still had the heads on them. And everyone, Heather, Lisa, all of them were all like, ah! And I was like, oh, for fuck's sakes. I take all the chickens, cut off their heads, cut off their feet, put those into another package, go in the freezer to make soup. So cut off the necks, put that, making soup, and all the rest of it. So that kind of shit doesn't faze me.
I probably would get over it, but initially it would shock me. I'd be a champ and I'd walk through it with you.
Sometimes you just gotta do it, eh?
Yep. Well, when I was in Australia with Ben, we had they'd found was a wallaby that had been hit on the road.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And Mark, our friend, brings it in and goes, got wallaby. We're gonna have some wallaby for dinner tonight. And we sat there and we hung it upside down and they bled it out and then we dressed it, and Ben and I peeling all the skin and the fur off of it, and I was so proud of my little Pixie, my little girl. At the time, what was she? So it was like 2.5 years ago. So she was like 10, 11. She watched the whole process and she was like, so that's how you do it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then Ben made a big ass marinade and they marinated it for like 48 hours. And then we put it on the big barbecue and we fucking had roasted wallaby. And the rest of it was soup.
Yeah, I'd probably have to tranquilize myself a bit for the first time. I don't think I'd do that great. I'd have to deep breathe.
It's intense. It is intense.
It is intense.
Like even when I've got to, because you got to cull roosters, because if you have too many roosters, shit gets fucked up, and your chickens stop laying eggs and stuff. So what did I do last season? I think I did 12 in a row. So 12 roosters in one morning from 4:30 till whatever it was, 8 o'clock. That's hardcore because I go and say goodbye to them and everything.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like
before, I'm like, you've been told, 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 and I told them like a month ago. So, yeah.
Well, when we were there at Mark's place, there were several times they went out to call out the roosters, and there was a couple of the roosters that were fucking nasty and getting really dangerous. And Mark was like, do you feel like making soup? I'm like, sure. He goes, okay, those two got to go because that one just tried to attack me. It was like, that's it. But the same thing, they went out and the same thing. They talked to them and they thanked them and they go through the whole thing and it's, you know, but someone's
you don't ever eat meat the same way afterwards, regardless of where it's from. Like, that's the other thing. It's like, you know.
Yeah. Like I said, I grew up.
I would believe that.
The bigger the animal, the more hardcore it is, because like via association, it gets closer, right?
When I grew up in Cape Breton Island, it was a really depressed time during the late 60s and the early 70s. There was no money, there was no work, and basically whatever was hunted that day was what you had for dinner that night. And I grew up that way. And in Canada, like, people hunt, like a lot of people hunt and still hunt to this day. So I've always been around people who go hunting and they hunt deer. And they go in and they put in the deer, but that's their food. That's their winter stash, and that's what they use for the winter.
Exactly, they use the whole animal, right?
Yep. I get really, really angry here in Malta. They're all about hunting, and they shoot birds, and they'll shoot any fucking bird, and I mean literally any fucking bird. Doesn't matter if it's a protected bird. Every year. This year again, the blue herons came over. 3 blue herons got fucking shot by hunters, and they don't care. They just shoot them and let them fall.
You know, it's quite funny because I was about to say something and I thought, oh, I won't say it, and then you did it again. It's like, because I was gonna, like, in this area here, right, it's bird tribe. They don't eat. They're not like traditionally. They don't touch birds. Birds are not on their menu whatsoever. So when you start learning lore, LORE. And then you're a chicken farmer, it's like, oh, how does this stuff fit into, like, because I always look at it as energetically as well, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like there's a reason they didn't. You know what I mean? Like, It's like, it wasn't that they couldn't catch them or anything. Like, there was a reason in this particular area they didn't eat birds. What does that mean energetically? Yeah. And then you started talking about Malta and them shooting birds. It was quite fucking funny.
Well, the Maltese falcon has been fucking extinct for 50 years. Because they killed them all. And I got into, like, and they're really sanctimonious because everyone here, there's thousands of hunters and all the rest of it.
Was there excuse like the sheep or something like that?
No. It's like, and I had one mouthy asshole sit there and go, well, I don't know what you're talking about. You come from Canada. You said you're from Canada. People hunt there. And I'm like, yeah, people hunt there for food. I have lived my whole life around hunters. And whatever they shoot, they eat. They don't shoot for fun. They don't go out hunting just to shoot shit and leave it drop wherever they've shot it. They hunt for food. You go hunting boar, you bring home boar, and that's what is on the menu for the next fucking week and a half.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a friend who lives on Baffin Island in a small Inuit community, and they all hunt polar bears. Now it's regulated. They're only allowed to hunt one polar bear, but they use every single piece of that animal. They'll make the baby carriers. They make their muckluck boots, which never thaw. They don't even tan them. They just keep them out. Well, they cure it, but you know what I mean? They don't have to treat it. They it's always frozen. So they just keep them in there and everything, but they use every single bit of that animal. And they do like Ben does. They give it a goodbye. They do the prayer. They do the whole, respectfully.
Yep.
So
yeah, those sorts of things are all done, well, were all done wholeheartedly, like full respect for it,
Yep.
It's interesting.
I think of how I hate it, like all these people who just kill for sport. Ugh.
Oh, that's disgusting. I mean, I had a really good friend growing up who was Mohawk, but she was way up northern Ontario, and they were in a terrible, where she grew up, they were the poorest of the poorest of the poor. They had nothing. They had no electricity in their reservation. They didn't have running water and everything. And she said that was it. Like the hunters would go out, and what they brought home was what fed the entire village, if you will, for however long it lasted. And it's the same thing. Not a scrap was wasted, because the leathers were all tanned to make shoes, to make moccasins, to make jackets, to make clothing, to make they tanned. She says she learned as a child how to do the strips with any of the leftover bits of leather, that your small ones, and how to cut it into the thin strips to make laces. That was the job of the little kids, like to scrape it out and tan these. And like the kids were in charge of making all the laces, so for tying up the moccasins, for tying up the clothing, etc., etc. Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta go do some works.
Yeah, and I'm going to make Star the host. There's
And I have to leave. I have to go take care of my little piggy who's sick.
You go look after. How's she doing?
You know what? She hasn't eaten for 48 hours, but I stayed up all night and I gave her syringed water with Pedialyte in it every hour. So I'm going on 48 hours myself with no sleep, but she's hanging in. So
get yourself some sleep, because you can't look after her if you're not looking after yourself.
It's true, but I'm just so worried, right? Like, you know, I know you guys are animal lovers, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. You just want to, I can't sleep. I just need to look after her. Like I said, every hour I give her a syringe with Pedialyte in it and probiotic. The vet recommended powdered children's probiotic because she's got some gastro thing happening. But the amazing thing is I asked you guys for blessings and for her, and I've had 4 guinea pigs, and when they go fast. So this is incredible. They usually go within 24 hours with the first indication of any problem. So maybe she'll just make it through. I sure hope so. That would be really nice. So yeah, I'm gonna go too.
Okay, you go, Nancy.
Guys.
So, I am going to arrange to do another C60 call sometime probably in the next few days. So if you guys want to, I'll let everyone know in advance. So more questions and answers, because I can still always get lots of questions from people. So if we just have it kind of more like an impromptu, just relaxed conversation. Okie dokie.
Okay. Love you guys.
I love you, darlings. I'm going to bed now before I fall over.
Night.
One small step for man.